Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Hello and good evening, Rush Nation. Hope you're keeping well. Back here, week 14 is almost done and dusted. The fantasy regular season is almost over. Playoffs around the corner. And I'm joined, you'll be pleased as I am to see the big man is back and beaming. Murf, it's great to have you here. How are you doing?
Thanks, mate. Yeah, it's good to be here. Sorry about last week. Wasn't just health related. There was some work stuff, sort of the last things of the year. So I get to pivot in about 2 days where I've gone from being insanely busy to pretty much nothing, like a standstill. So it's really bizarre. My line of work kind of shuts down. So I was on the phone to Australia and that very late, and that conflicted with this. And then, I haven't been feeling very good. I feel a bit better over the last couple of days. It's kind of up and down. I don't know what it is. At some point, I'll have a colonoscopy and we'll find out what it is. But I just continue to fight the good fight, my friend, and see what happens and try not stress for it day to day and just try and get on with it. But appreciate a lot of the messages of support that people have sent me. I really, it's been really helpful. It's I can't think of wanting to say it in a better way. It is comforting when you hear from people who sort of suffer from gut issues. Not because it's not because I'm obviously happy that people are suffering, but I've had some unbelievable advice sent to me that has either been really useful or eye-opening, and gives me an opportunity to have some conversations and think about some things. Then I don't feel alone, whereas I probably did it about a week and a half ago when I don't know what's going on. No one's talking to me. No one's really telling me anything. And so now I feel armed with a lot of information. I'm really grateful to people who have told me their stories and give me a lot of insight, and even checking in even after they've shared them. So Twitter's an amazing place. So we can all give it some crap, and there's some nasty parts to it. But the people that got in touch, not just to send wishes, but also just to share their personal stories with me and to tell me how they're dealing with them. So I'm really grateful for that. And there's a few people in our community that aren't very well themselves. It's not just me. It's a few things. So I'll send best wishes to Matt. I know Matt, Dynasty Matt is dealing with COVID, and that's not been good. And then also to Matt Cullen, founder of the JTT Cup. He's been in the wars this week as well, with a couple of different things. So want to send Godspeed and good health to those guys, and hope they're up and running and fighting fit very soon. So, but yeah, it's good to be back. You guys killed it last week. I feel like I'm sort of slowly not needing the job anymore. So, you guys got everyone ready for week 14 well. And now we got the pressure of helping people through fantasy playoffs time. It all kicks off tomorrow, and it's an exciting time. It's Christmas, isn't it, really? For us, the fantasy playoffs and all that hard work comes to fruition, and we're taking questions. Feel free to drop a question if you are on if you're watching this on StreamYard on Twitter. DM me the question, because it doesn't appear up in this chat, so I want to make that clear. So it's not that we're ignoring you, is we cannot see it. So drop me a DM on
YouTube,
Twitter.
right?
That's right. So if you're on Facebook and YouTube, we will see those questions. If you're on Twitter, we will not. Just send it to me directly via DM on Twitter, and we'll pick it up. I have already got one.
Oh,
it is from Stacey.
Nice.
So I guess we'll start here before we get into the rest of the show. And it's, will Nick Chubb continue the way he's going the last couple of weeks with Watson at quarterback? It's kind of a hard question, because the Browns, it's a two-headed sword. I mean, I don't know what people kind of expect for a guy who's basically not played football for 2 years. He's not going to just come out and just sling it and be Deshaun Watson, former Pro Bowler. He's not played football for 2 years. He's on a new team with new players, Like it's not like he's had that long to practice. It's not a surprise that he looks rusty and he looks.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis spoke about this last week.
Yeah, exactly.
One QB league, you're not playing him till next season. This is an extended pre-season for him.
Yeah, that's exactly what this is. It's just to get him back. No disrespect to the Browns, but we can't really see them factoring in the playoff challenge. I know they're still technically in the hunt. I know they could still get there, but we're not really expecting the Browns to get there. Not with the Ravens and the Bengals in their division. We're not kind of expecting them to get in the mix, and they've got to play.
Yeah.
They've got to play at least the Ravens, and they've got to play the Commanders, who are in a playoff mix. So they got the Saints in there as well, which defensively aren't bad, but offensively not good. So I can't see too many more wins for the Browns. They need to run the table to even have a chance. So sorry, I think that's the Bengals. No, I had to get that right. Sorry. I think
Browns
there's a few
more New Orleans, Washington, Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So and then you factor in. You factor in Nick Chubb here, and Nick Chubb's schedule as a result of that. There's no games there I look at that and think, yeah, I really want a big piece of that. Obviously, his talent prevails. I do think he will do quite well, but I think let's cap the expectation level here that he's an RB1 probably because there aren't enough RB1s.
Yep.
But I don't think we're looking at early season Nick Chubb. And if you're looking at his yards after contact are going down, they're not bad, but they are going down. He's not blessed with, red zone targets. He's not blessed with, getting a lot of receptions here either. So I think to quantify the question, I don't kind of know. Like if you're expecting early season Nick Chubb, not going to happen. Hasn't happened.
Which is weird. We've seen a drop off in Hunt's usage second half of the season, so you'd expect Chubb to pick up that, but they're just going along.
Well, you look at game script as well. So game script doesn't suit them. In a game like yesterday, they trailed the whole game. That doesn't necessarily help them either. Against the Ravens, it depends if Lamar plays. If Lamar isn't playing, they probably have half a chance in that game. And you might be a bit closer. Against the Saints, you would expect him to maybe have an opportunity to dominate, but the Saints are one of the better run defenses in the NFL, but you would expect him to probably break away a few. But that last week, championship week, will be a tough one against the Commanders. That's not a game that I would kind of look at and think, oh, I'm really jazzed to play him. I mean, you would, because he's an RB1 and there's not many RB1s. I don't think there's even a have to. I don't think it's a conversation. So I think you're not going to be in a scenario where you're ever going to bench him. But I think if you're sitting here, if someone said to me right now, is Nick Chubb going to win me a fantasy title in 2022? I'm going to go probably not. Compared to some of the other guys, like I've been banging the drum for someone like Miles Sanders, who showed that yesterday. That they're the kind of guys I would be much happier to have on my squad right now than someone like Nick Chubb. But he's going to return what you paid. You would have paid a late first round pick for him. He's going to be probably worth that, whilst being a probably unspectacular year for him. But he's probably still going to be a top 3 to top 5 back this year. So
RB6 currently,
yeah, so he's probably going to be around that conversation, which is, about where he was drafted. So you have to look at that and think he was probably good value in the end, but it's been a slightly unremarkable year after the start he had. So did have another question that's come through on the Facebook. If you're out of playoff contention, is it poor form to grab a DST with a good playoff schedule to try and trade for a low rookie pick or player to a team with playoff chances asking for a friend? I don't think that's poor form. I think that's smart. I don't.
Dynasty's all year round. Take any advantage you can get. Pick up anybody you want. If you can trade them for something, then all well and good. I would just say, if you're in the playoffs, is there much benefit to trading something for a DST? Probably not.
Yeah, well, that would be the argument I would have, is that it's
if you can trade a DST, then cracking, go for it.
Yeah, exactly that. I don't think you're going to get a buyer for you, but I never have a problem with people picking up players, even if they're not in the playoffs. Like, I just don't. I don't have a problem. Like, there's this big debate on Twitter. It happens every single year. I always get embroiled on it, and it always kicks me It was stopped.
Yeah, I saw that come through. Yeah.
The man himself, the man, the legend. I always get embroiled in this every year that there is an argument in, and I'm going to say, without being xenophobic or rude, it tends to be an American audience that tend to believe this more than a UK audience, that if you're not in the playoffs, you shouldn't make waiver claims. Because even if you're in the losers, no, in a redraft league.
Okay.
Which I just disagree with. I think as long as you have a fixture, because I'm one of these guys, I don't want to come last.
Yeah.
I don't want to come last. And if your league has draft implications for next year, even if it doesn't,
yeah,
exactly that. Even if it doesn't, I don't care. Like if I've got a fixture and there's a waiver claim I can make that allows me to make that claim and allows me to make my team better, I don't care if I'm playing for 10th place or first place. I'm going to play to win. That's how I play, and I won't do that. The only time I will kind of do that is in a league like the Scott Fish Bowl, when if there is no playoffs, so your season is done, you're not making the playoffs. I will get to a point where I'll go to the point where I'm just not going to bother. I'm not going to bother making waiver claims because I can't improve my team, or maybe I can slightly. And we're talking about this is such a deep league, 22 team rosters. You're talking about kickers and very low end players. There's not many great opportunities you're going to get on the waiver wire in that sort of league. That's a bit different. And then obviously I wouldn't, but I think as long as you're playing, you should play. I think DST, if someone is willing to trade you a DST and willing to give you a pick for it, yeah, I think it's fair game. I would
do it if it was a handcuff running back that come through. You do it if it was a Chris Moore after the week he's had. Why not? Why not do it for DST? It's dynasty football. It's year round. Never stops football. It's about making your roster better for the next and the next and the next. And
I think if you can get people to pay up. Sorry, I've got someone who just tweeted me because he's watching Strictly, or he's about to watch the Strictly show, and he doesn't want to cut off. And I told him I know who goes anyway because it's not aired, but it leaks the results, so I know who goes. And he's asked me who goes, so he can stick and watch the show. So I've tweeted him that so he can stick around. I think. But what I would do in these sorts of scenarios is I would have someone cover on, and Stan's just going to step away for a minute. He's just had a
kids.
Yeah. So I'll just take over this bit, and if you got any questions, not my mic over while we're doing it. Great audio. So I would be, if in this scenario, if I'm trying to rebuild, especially if I'm short of picks, I'd be picking up handcuff running backs. I'd be looking at situations. So I look like Chuba Hubbard this week and think, well, he's getting quite a significant amount of work, got the touchdown. He's maybe someone I carry in case there's an injury there. I'd be looking at those sorts of players, especially if you're playing in leagues where there's multiple running back spots. Pick up those players. You never know. Come up to the plate. Someone might give you a third round pick for Chuba Hubbard in championship week. It happens. I think I did this last year in a league, and I did it with Dare Ogunbowale. Someone needed him for a starter. I think they won the championship, so I think it was a good trade regardless. But yeah, there's that option. So while Dan's away, I thought what I'd do is just look at some fantasy expected points. Now, when I do this point of the year, we're getting to the playoffs. Playoffs start tomorrow. I want to look at players that are potentially going to hurt my roster because they're currently overperforming, and players who potentially might come back into form because they've been underperforming. I think there's very little out there that's going to improve your roster from a waiver wire perspective. I think depending on your needs and requirements, you might find someone who you would want to add or someone you would need to add. Then those things are very different. But I do think that at that point you will need to add somebody. But I think what I'd rather look at is having these scenarios where you can find players who potentially are overvalued and undervalued. There's two players right now that are significantly scoring more points per game, expected points per game than they should be. And it's quite a significant amount. And they're Tony Pollard and Christian Watson. And they for very different reasons. Tony Pollard has been a hyper efficient running back. His Yards after contact, if you're looking about significant ball carriers, is the best in the NFL right now. He's averaging 2.8 yards after contact, which when we're looking at players who are better than that, no one ahead of him has more than 57 carries. That's Rashard Penny. And anyone else after that has only got 15 carries or less. So we're looking at Tony Pollard's sample size here of 158 carries for 894 yards. 2.8 yards after contact is a huge amount. And so when you're looking at him, he's hyper efficient. That hyper efficiency could continue over the next few weeks. We saw yesterday he got 2 touchdowns, 1 receiving, 1 rushing. And that really helped his numbers significantly. But it is Zeke Elliott that's getting the majority of the work, whether or not we as fantasy owners agree with that. That is what is happening. And so the trap play that you have with someone like Tony Pollard is difficult because the way he's scoring right now, he's impossible to drop. But the trap play he is that he can very easily underperform in the column. He can very easily underperform in fantasy points because in a game that, and we saw it yesterday where it was quite a close game, he won't get as much volume of work as, say, someone like Zeke. And so we have to be a little bit careful with someone like Tony Pollard. And just be careful because he's one of those trap players who could very easily cost you a fantasy title by starting. Having said that, there aren't that many great running backs out there. He's always going to be a top 24 running back. You would probably feel like you would need to start him. The other thing to keep an eye on is that his schedule isn't particularly great. You know, he's got the Jaguars, which next week, which isn't a particularly bad matchup. You've got the Eagles. You look at that and think they're going to be behind in that game. More than likely, GameScript's going to go against someone like Tony Pollard. That could be a tough Week 16 matchup. Get through the championship week. They've got the Titans. That does look like a good matchup for Tony Pollard, especially the way that the Titans are playing. Moving to someone like Christian Watson. Christian Watson is overperforming right now because of touchdowns. He's scoring a significant amount of touchdowns, especially in a very short space of time. And that's what's increased his expected points total. He's averaging 4.4 fantasy points per game over expected. That's kind of what he's averaging. And that's because the volume isn't it's not bad volume. It's increased over recent weeks. But he is someone who, because of the efficiency of touchdowns he's getting right now, he's overperforming. So he's a player that you have to be very careful of. The other situation you need to watch out there is Green Bay are very close to being eliminated from playoff contention. Do they then bench Aaron Rodgers, who we know is carrying a thumb or a hand injury or something like that? So that's something you've got to be a little bit careful for as well. So there's a few players here overperforming. Chubb, as we've already talked about him, he's overperforming at the moment by 3.6 points per game. That's been pretty consistent. Josh Jacobs is overperforming by 3.7 points per game again, but that's been pretty consistent all season. So they're kind of like the major ones to watch out for. But I would say, with those last 2 names, it's definitely been more a case of the fact that they have been consistently overperforming all season. And actually, Chubb's numbers declined quite significantly in recent weeks. Whereas we look at players that are significantly underperforming, I keep talking about Deontay Johnson. He is consistently underperforming in this expected points model. He's actually, if you excuse number 1 and 2, which is Racing McMath and Desmond Patman, who have put together 21 combined fantasy points all season. You look at Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson is underperforming by 6.4 fantasy points per game. 6.4. I mean, huge. They've got this now. We don't know what's going on at the quarterback position. Mitch Trubisky played all right yesterday. Could he come back? Is there injuries to Kenny Pickett? Is there concussion? It's kind of all up in the air. I think Deontay Johnson is a player that we're seeing volume come his way now. We're seeing it's pretty steady. He is a flex play moving forward, but I also think he's due a decent spike week at some point. That under efficiency as well is also touchdown based. Whilst he's got a decent volume, they're not scoring many points, this Pittsburgh offense. And there's a reason for that. So that's one I would particularly look at. Keenan Allen is another one that's partly due to some injuries and he's missed some time, but he's a player that's also underperforming in the expected points per game column. So he's a player that I expect to readjust back to the mean over the next couple of weeks. So he's a player to look at. But another one that interests me, and it's good timing that Dan's back because it's one of Dan's. We're talking about
DJ
expected.
Shark.
That's exactly who I was about to come on to is DJ
I haven't got a
Chark.
clue.
Is your man
I knew
DJ
it.
Chark? So DJ Chark, when I look at expected fantasy points per game, and these numbers are all courtesy of PFF, I've talked about Deontay Johnson. I'm excusing players with like less than 20 fantasy points over the season, right? So Deontay Johnson, miles out in front. Then Keenan Allen, Jameson Williams, but he's barely played. Javonte Williams, who's finished for the season. But then you have DJ Chark. Now, DJ Chark is underperforming by 4.2 fantasy points per game on average. Mm-hmm. And I think that as we started to see this over the coming weeks, and it might muddy a little bit now with Jameson Williams and what he did yesterday and him getting more work. But I think DJ Chark is someone who is potentially a flex play for the rest of the season, given that we've got Detroit firing on all cylinders. They've got a terrible matchup against the Jets. So, that might be one that you fade completely, given the Jets are almost impossible to play against. You look at the way that they handle Stephon Diggs. But their last two games are the Panthers and then the Bears, who are two of the three worst defenses when it comes to covering wide receiver fantasy points in the NFL. And I look at DJ Chark and I think, okay, so he's underperformed reasonably in the expected points column. But he's not had the volume that he's had in recent weeks because he's not been healthy. Mm-hmm. But now I look at that schedule and I think you fade week 15 completely. I would completely fade DJ Chark against the Jets. It's just a terrible matchup. I'd get rid of it. But week 16, week 17, I think if I'm really struggling for flex spots here, DJ Chark is someone I would be targeting and thinking he's due. And we saw it on Sunday. He's due some performances and he showed one on Sunday.
I'd say he's also somebody, and we speak about floor and ceiling and how your projections in a matchup, and if you're ahead or behind. We mentioned a player earlier who's got tough matchups in those weeks, in Nick Chubb, who might be a flex play. Shark's upside outweighs Chubb's for me in those matchups that they have. If you've got two sound, solid running backs in there that you like.
Yeah, I agree.
Gambling. I'd be gambling. If you're behind on 20 points on a projection, gamble.
I've got a couple of questions in my Twitter DM. So I'm going to ask the first one because it's relevant to this point. So this is from Michael. So Michael has asked, would you keep Chark and Amon-Ra St. Brown in the same fantasy team? It's a super flex league, but he's only got 3 bench spots. He should have a bye for next week, so he's not worried about week 15 in the Jets.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Because at the minute, they're both being sustainable as options for me. I don't know how big the starting lineup is. I know the bench is very small. But if either one goes down, you're almost handcuffing the other as well at this stage of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, Sharks last 3 games, 5 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets on the increase, 9 points, 14 points, 21 points. Skip the Jets. That's with Amon-Ra in the team.
Yeah.
If he delivers you 21 points in week 16, you're going to a final if the rest of the roster stands up.
Yeah. I mean, I would only caveat this with depends who else is out there. But I doubt there's going to be many better options than DJ Chark. I would never say there never is because you can't see the list. You can't predict what's out there. But here's a question for you. Hypothetical question. You've got a waiver wire choice between Chris Olave and DJ Chark. Who are you picking up for the final 3 games of the season?
Let's have a look at Olave's schedule very quickly. You got?
I can give you that. So
Atlanta,
Olave's
Philly.
Yeah.
It's got Atlanta, Cleveland, and Philly. Again, it depends on
the
rest of the roster build.
Yeah. I mean, Philly's a terrible matchup.
Yeah. And I'm a Shark fan, I'd have to say. Targets are the same, 5, 6, 9, 6 for the last few weeks for Olave. Yeah, I think I'd gamble on the upside of Shark.
I think I'm with you. I think I'm with you because I think you've got a quarterback there who's putting up points. You've got a team that's putting up points. And then I look at those 2 matchups. Again, week 15's tough. If you get a bye, fantastic. Mm-hmm. I look at week 16, week 17 and think, yeah, I don't think he just told me that his other wide receivers are DPJ and Drake London. And there's now on the waiver wire. So yeah, I'm 100% holding Chark because Chark plays for me over DPJ and he plays over Drake London right now. So yeah, I'm 100% comfortable. I would say as a draft build, I don't love it. But in this situation of where we are now, you have got, it's a similar situation to, I think there's a few teams you look at, I know this didn't happen yesterday, T. Higgins, but T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. If you have both of those players on the same team, you're starting them. Of course you are. And I think you can start, again, I don't think you start DJ Chark next week, but I think any other week I'm absolutely starting DJ Chark, and I feel pretty good about it. So, yeah, I'm with you. And I love the fact that we get to talk positively about DJ Chark because you have been on him from the beginning.
I've wanted it all along. He's never been fit.
Yeah. You were on it early, and this is the time that you get to stick your hands up in the air and do a victory lap, my friend. I have another question that's come through my Twitter DMs, and it's asked to me about you. So this is from Jenks, who's a mutual friend of you and I.
He is.
So he says, I'm new to fantasy leagues, but I might meet Dan in the playoffs. Can I have some tips on how to beat him, please?
So hold on. Just to put a bit of context on this, I spoke last week about a roster I had that lost Lamar Jackson, Kenneth Walker, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle. It's that league that I am now. I've somehow got a win this week playing Zonovan Knight, Singletary, Zay Jones, Garrett Wilson, and I've still managed to win. And Jared Goff, who I picked off the waiver wire. So I've hit the jackpot this week. But yeah, I'm going to be coming into Craig, so I'm very surprised.
Is that the home league or is that a different Bucks league?
It's a Bucks UK.
Oh, right, okay, fine. Look, tips to beat Dan at this stage of the season, right? You can't really play the man. It's kind of tough. The cards have been dealt. I think if you can get DJ Chark, which you're probably not allowed to.
Nope, not on there. Not on there. Don't worry, I'll look for that one myself.
I think you've said it yourself, right? So you're struggling at quarterback. You have to look at what quarterback options are out there that block Dan.
In that situation, I went and waived Goff, claimed him. I claimed Zonovan Knight really last minute, Sunday morning, based on Michael Carter still being iffy. Zay Jones, I'm a huge fan of, so he went in as my only wide receiver because I dropped Traylon Burks.
Yeah,
to have him in. Pittman's on a bye, who's my only bench wide receiver. Everyone else is running back. The lineup I played had Hurts, Dobbins, Etienne, AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, and that team of nobodies overcome it.
Yeah,
which doesn't make sense.
I think it's a hard one. I think I would say, knowing Dan the way I do, and he plays the game very similar to me, you have to shoot for upside. I think Dan will set a lineup that will be as consistent as he can, and then he will probably put some upside plays in there. So I think you can only counter that with what's available to you. I would say you can't play safe. I think you have to be aggressive. So I'd be looking at lineup choices, and I would say that if you're favored to not win or it's favored to be close, I would be very bold in those choices. So I would look at, for example, you made a bold choice, well, maybe not because of your lineup selections, but I would always pick someone like Zay Jones who potentially has that upside. I look at lineup selections yesterday. I always felt that Evan Ingram was a great lineup selection. It's easy to say now in hindsight, but I was in a league that we're both in on Saturday against Sharky, and I changed my tight end up, and Evan Ingram was weirdly out on the waiver wire. I picked him up on Saturday, put him straight in my lineup, and it's probably got me a playoff berth as a result.
I played Evan Ingram in a lot of DFS.
Yeah, it was a great lineup play. And I think it's those kind of plays, and we'll come up with some later on in the week, and I can give you some recommendations. But I think you've just got to be really bold with your selections this week, because if you've snuck in and you're a low buy, you're not favourite to win the game. If you're and this is true of any build, right? So I know we're speaking very specifically about playing Dan, but I'm going to try and keep this general because otherwise it'd be boring. If you're a fifth
Lots
and
of people
sixth seed,
beat me. Just ask anyone out there.
to be honest, this is a cakewalk this year. But if you're the fifth and sixth seed and you've kind of just snuck in here, you've got to be really bold with your selection. Unless you're on a superb run of form. I've got a team that's rattled off 4 straight to get into the playoffs. I don't need to be necessarily as bold with that team and I look at my points scored. Look at the points scored. I think that's a really good indicator. Where is your team sitting? If your points scored is aligned with your league position, you're 5th and 6th, and you're playing against teams with better points scored over the season and better points scored over previous weeks. And I look at sort of a 3-4 game window as a good measure of that. So I look at 2 measures, the measure of the season, but then that could be heavily skewed over early season versus late season. I'm in a league now that a team started 9-0 and they've limped to the 1 seed, and they're struggling to put up 100 points a game, and they're a sitting duck.
Where a team started 8-0 and they've missed a bye.
Yeah,
they've dropped third.
Yeah, and they're a sitting duck. So I look at the 1 seeded, and I think if I get through this week in that league, I get to play the 1 seed, and I'm licking my lips at this, thinking I can definitely beat that team. So there's different circumstances, but if your team is stacked up to be the 5th, 6th best team based on the last few weeks and based over the season, then you've got to be really bold with your selection choices. You've got to forget about floor play. You've got to shoot for it, because there is nothing worse than going for a safe play. And I'll give you a great example. Someone who would have been seen as a quote unquote safe play was someone like Robert Woods yesterday. And people were picking up Robert Woods and playing him because he was scheduled to be a low-end wide receiver 3 play. Just not going to get it done. It's just not going to get it done. Robert Woods might get you 10 points, 11 points, but he's not going to win you the game. You know, you're much better shooting for a Darius Slayton, who I know didn't have a great game yesterday, but at least the logic made sense that he makes the big plays. And those are the types of bold moves.
A Christian Watson next week, potentially.
Yeah,
like that.
Exactly that. And I think you've just got to make the ball. Even a Zovian Knight, for example, he's someone that I would have scooped up and taken as a punt. Even, and I know it didn't work out yesterday, one of the Seattle running backs, and taken that as a punt. You know, I think go make the big play, because if you hit it, like I played Jerry Jeudy in the lineup yesterday, because I was like, it's Jerry Jeudy or it was Robert Woods. And I was like, well, if anyone's going to score, and I know that offense has been bad, it's going to be Jerry Jeudy. Yeah. I can't see Robert Woods putting up more than 11 points. And I know Jerry Judy's been struggling, but they had to get it right one day, and they did. So,
top wide receivers week 14 in PPR, other than the big names, let's get wrong. Jefferson, Chase, Hill are 3 of the top 4, right? Ignore that. Sharks in there. Juju, I guess, in some thin leagues maybe available. Marquise Goodwin was in there. Zay Jones is in there. Chris Moore's in there. Richie James is in there.
Yeah, Richie James is a good one.
Amari Rogers finally turned up on the NFL scene, putting up 14 points. Isaiah Hodgins.
Oh God, I'm not. I can't advocate Isaiah Hodgins. I'm sorry, that was a fluke play. Like whatever.
It was. Well, the other one's Trenton Irwin. I missed him. Because that was one play.
Well, yeah, but that was that was a freak, because we need to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and their abuse of the injury list. You know, how you can have T. Higgins not be on the injury list, and then he makes one.
Not moan about teams abusing an injury list.
We're not today.
Just move on.
But yeah, I think we look at those and think that it's a good question about how you beat your opponent, and I think there is definitely a lot of attraction to have. But I think at this stage, I think you can play the man, but I think you've got to make the bold lineup decisions, and those bold lineup decisions are shoot for the moon if you're the 5th and 6th seed.
You take a DFS style approach to it. You start looking at, as we've already mentioned, you've got the Jets that week. Poor matchup, skip it, move it. Even though you're probably saying he is a startable flex option, DJ Shark for the playoffs, you're going to skip it. You play Zay Jones, Chris Moore, Marcus Goodwin potentially in place of him because of the matchup.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just while we're on this, right?
One against KC next week.
If
Collins and Cooks are both out still, could be a feasible option.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to zero in a little bit on DSTs, right? So DSTs have got favorable matchups in the next few weeks. The one I would be absolutely clamoring to grab right now is the Los Angeles Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
If I could get the Los Angeles Chargers on all of my rosters right now for the playoffs, I will be in excellent shape. So the Los Angeles Chargers in their 3 playoff games have the Tennessee Titans, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Los Angeles Rams. Like, it's an absolute dream schedule. Their schedule is only equaled by the Detroit Lions, who have got the Jets, the Panthers, and the Bears. My problem is the Lions aren't good defensively. That's and the points don't matter, but I don't see the same level of sack production, tackle.
I don't even mind the Ravens. Cleveland, Atlanta, and Pittsburgh.
No, there's some really good ones. So I'm gonna highlight some here. Well, you say that the Ravens D isn't that good because, I mean, the Falcons do put up quite a lot of points. But you know, it's
this week.
No, that is true. And that probably does skew it back in their favor a little bit. They're ranked. If you look at remaining,
Mariota on IR.
Yeah, when they've looked at, oh really? Okay. So when you look at remaining strength of schedule for DST, they're ranked 23rd, but yeah, there are some mitigating factors in there. Tennessee have a really good schedule, though you don't really want to play them championship week. But again, they have the Chargers and the Texans. So you might want to do like a hybrid flip between the Chargers and the Texans. That looks like a really good play. KC's isn't that bad, although they do have the Seahawks week 16. The Buccaneers looks good because you're right. Next week's pretty poor against the Bengals, but they've got the Cardinals who can get turnovers off, and the Panthers looks good. Cleveland's looks okay. Definitely do not pick up the New Orleans Saints. So and New England. So people have been carrying New England all season, right? And I was heavy on New England. I think they were like almost exclusively my only drafted DST. I think I took them in about 98% of leagues. But their schedule is the second worst now, and it's really flipped. It's gone really bad. So I'm cashing out all my New England shares where possible, and I'm looking to pick up anything I can. The Chargers and Tennessee hybrid would be the two that I'd be looking to kind of mold my way through. So there's just a bit of defensive strategy for you. If we're looking at wide receivers that potentially I don't say you can go out and get, but wide receivers you should feel pretty comfortable starting, even though you probably weren't feeling overly comfortable starting them. Garrett Wilson has got the best schedule for the playoffs, followed by Michael Pittman. And in like side, I would also say Paris Campbell could be a potential flex play. Juju Smith-Schuster's is pretty decent. Robinson of Baltimore, his schedule looks pretty decent. Chark we've talked about, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Thielen, Jefferson look good. Christian Watson's schedule looks pretty good as well. So there's some players that are looking good. If we're looking at certain red flag players, Devonta Smith for me looks like a real red flag. He's got the hardest schedule. I think AJ Brown navigates over that, right? But I think Devonta Smith against the Bears, I'm not too worried, but then he's got the Cowboys and then the Saints, and that's a pretty difficult set of matchups, especially if you're thinking about they've already got the playoffs locked in week 17. They could already have the bye locked. I'm just a bit unsure about Devonta Smith in the fantasy playoffs. I don't know much of him, but he's a weary trap play for me. I'm one that I'm slightly concerned about. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a player I'm deeply concerned about in the fantasy playoffs. Mac Hollins, Goodwin is one I'm worried about. Anyone from LA I'm worried about in the playoffs. Drake London I'm worried about in the fantasy playoffs. Tyler Boyd, although he could be, I don't know how long he's likely to be out for, but he's not one that would appear on my radar for the fantasy playoffs. Anyone for Chicago, not that we were probably starting them anyway, but yeah, I wouldn't be too inclined to start them either. Denver's schedule doesn't look too good either. So yeah, there's a few wide receivers there I'd kind of just be a bit cautious about going into the playoffs. Any more for you that you think you'd be a bit worried about?
Or wide receivers.
Yeah.
Other than schedule, I guess I'm factoring in performance regularly. Tampa's at the minute, for instance, disappointing on where they are. Debo had an injury there to keep an eye on. DJ Moore injured to keep an eye on. So people are going to be after these low-end flex plays to start in wide receiver slots right now. And we always talked about being ahead of your waiver wire. You know, if you've got Debo or DJ Moore right now, you need to go and get Zay Jones or DJ Shark off your waivers in a hurry before everybody else does.
Yeah, I completely agree.
You're going to need them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Looking at other tactics, right? If you're needing a DST for week 15, go and grab the Green Bay Packers tonight before your waivers start, because they've got the Rams in week 15.
Yep.
And that looks to me like a really, really good opportunity. So you could pick them up tonight before waivers run, and then you've got your DST for week 15. So if you're desperate for a good DST play in week 15, Green Bay looks good. You don't even have to put it through all your waivers. You could literally just add them now if you've got the space and, as a free agent, if you can drop someone. So yeah, I'd be doing that. Running backs, I'm severely concerned about going into the fantasy playoffs is Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. They've got the worst schedule, for me, their talent with the coaching staff doesn't prevail them to supersede that. So I am deeply concerned. Whether, say, someone like Austin Eckler has a terrible schedule, I'm not bothered about given the way that he is used. I don't care who he plays, really, because he's not a traditional running back in that sense. Kenneth Walker, if he comes back, that schedule's pretty rough. Josh Jacobs' championship week has the 49ers. So if you've been heavily reliant on Josh Jacobs, that's a really nasty one for your championship week. I mean, you're gonna play him. Of course you are. If he's fit, you're gonna play him. But that's a really tough one. Joe Mixon, I've talked about this for weeks. Joe Mixon's schedule is beyond poor, and his utilization is right down. If we looked at him yesterday, he was barely above 50%.
Derrick Henry that has a nice little schedule, doesn't it? Really, Derrick Henry. I mean, just had Jacksonville, he's got the Chargers, he's got Houston. He does have Dallas championship.
He does have the 5th best schedule. J.K. Dobbins has the best schedule by a country mile, followed by Alvin Kamara.
Good as well yesterday.
Yeah. Then you've got Jonathan Taylor. I'm not convinced Jonathan Taylor sees out the season still. I got that in the back of my mind. They're one game away from being eliminated from the playoffs. I can see them benching him. Detroit have a good one, but I can't play Swift right now. You can't trust him right now. But Xavier Knight, I tell you now, he's really interesting. He has a really good schedule. It looks like he has landed on the top of this depth chart. It looks like he's going to continue with the majority of the workload. I'd be feeling pretty good if I've got him on my roster now. I'm not saying I'm necessarily starting him every week, but I feel pretty good about having him. He's got the 6th easiest running back schedule coming in, and I'd feel pretty good starting him, especially next week against the Lions. I'd feel really good about that.
They got the Lions, Jacksonville, and Seattle.
Yeah, it's a really good schedule. I like Miles Sanders' schedule. Championship week against New Orleans. I think it looks on paper like it's not great, but I think they just run all over New Orleans. I'm not too worried about that. So I look at his schedule, and he's one that really jumps out at me quite significantly as well. So
nice.
I think there's some really good plays out there, but I think I'd be cautious of people like Latavius Murray. Tony Pollard is one I'm a bit cautious on. I don't love the schedule, and I don't love the fact he's so over on expected points because of his hyper efficiency if it touchdowns and touches. And I talked about this when you weren't here. I just have this. He's a player for me that could lose you a fantasy championship, and I would just think you've just got to be a little bit careful. He's the sort of player that could put up like a 6-7 point game. I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying you've got to be just a little bit cautious in your approach to Tony Pollard this year, because the volume is still going to Zeke. Another one I've got a massive radar alert for right now is Saquon Barkley, because it's now looking less and less likely the Giants are going to make the playoffs. They're on a bit of a slide. Saquon Barkley's schedule.
He's not getting usage either, is he?
No, he's not getting the red zone usage. His schedule is Minnesota, Washington, and Indianapolis. They're not exactly what I'd call soft run defenses. I think it's a difficult one for me to be betting my fantasy season on him. Dalvin Cook's another one. Dalvin Cook is really his utilization, his usage is, but we're borderline touchdown dependent now. He got a touchdown yesterday, he's still only got 8 points. He is someone who I'm weary of starting unless I really am out of better options. So a few names for you.
Like is Ramondre Stevenson, the Patriots. Patriots got Vegas, Cincinnati, and Miami.
Yeah, which I mean, I'm not.
Doesn't scream joy. We've just mentioned how many good teams how many good running backs we've got that have got tough lineups right now.
I think you got the names there wrong because they've got the Raiders. Yeah, they got the Raiders, the Bengals, and Miami. New England, Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah, Las Vegas, Cincinnati, and Miami. That's what I said.
Oh, okay. I don't love Miami Championship Week, but I do love Ramondre Stevenson. If anyone can overcome, he is one I would put in that column. I think for me, he's a top 5 player most weeks. Probably Championship Week, I would probably have him ranked outside of there. But yeah, I would feel pretty comfortable that you could start him there with comfort. I'm just checking if there's any more questions. If you do have questions, you're watching this on Twitter, drop me a DM because we can't see them in the chat. Or you can join on Facebook or YouTube and we will pick them up. So if you have any questions to help you get ready for Championship Week, we have gone through quite a lot of strategies, some players to keep an eye out for. We talked about some DSTs that you could stack, so you can go back and listen to this. We've highlighted a number of players. Basically, the Cliff Notes version of this so far is play DJ Chark wherever you can, except for next week. Is there anything else you think that we've given some strategy? A couple of weeks ago, we talked about playing more of a DFS style tournament, taking your shots, throwing a bit of caution to the wind. Is there any other strategy you would look at for the next couple of weeks? You're thinking how to navigate your playoffs?
Again, the same we've said all along is looking at projections are loosely done. I get it, but knowing when to gamble and when not to gamble, and then working out what that gamble is. So we've spoken. To give you an example. We've gone. DJ Chark could be a great upside player for the playoffs. Don't sit there next week and go, "Oh, I'm due to lose by 20." They said DJ Shark's a great player. I'll put DJ Chark in. Do the research behind it because DJ Chark isn't going to get you 20 points next week.
No.
So find the other guy that will. Find a Garrett Wilson if he's about for some reason. I don't know why he might be, but just look at those situations. So, know when to gamble, know when to gamble. Trust your gut is a lot of it at this time of year. I have been on Shark's drum all season long. Even before the season, I think I was banging DJ Shark's drum, and I've got a lot of him. It's finally paying off. Too late in a lot of leagues because I've missed out now. But trust your gut. If you've got a feeling for someone, it will come right. There's a reason why you've got it. So go with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Look back at your lineup and I wish I'd have started him in.
Well, I think your internet's gone. Yeah, you've frozen down. Couple of players I'll pick up while we're waiting for Dan to potentially come back. Pat Freiermuth is seeing a decline in snaps. He's one I would be slightly concerned about. He's still a top 12 fantasy asset for me, but he's one that I would be perhaps slightly worried about just because he's seeing a decline in snaps, a decline. I think Dan's back now. I was just talking about Pat Freiermuth. You got cut off halfway through your point.
Sorry.
I was just saying Pat Freiermuth is someone I would be, again, another player I'd be very cautious about going into fantasy playoff time.
Yeah, all tight ends, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but he's seeing a decline in workload and decline in touches and snaps played. So he's someone I'd be worried about quite significantly. I don't think there was anything else other than yesterday. I had another question coming in. Would you play Alan Lazard over DPJ and Drake London? Or would you have them on your roster over them?
not a fan of Lazard. I never have been throughout his entire career, to be honest with you. I'd probably play Donovan Peoples-Jones out of the three of them, depending on what matchups they've got without doing the legwork behind them. I think that's a safer bet.
So I'm with you. I would have DPJ, but I'd have Lazard over Drake London.
See, I'm also intrigued. Drake London, is he back fit and healthy? Was he injured? No, he isn't. Is he? I'm intrigued to see Drake London. I don't think I can play him next week. But with Desmond Ridder coming in at QB, Desmond Ridder in the preseason had decent yards. He had decent touchdowns through the air.
It's a very strange time to make that decision and to see it play out. We're talking about a rookie QB, and I know Brock Purdy's done well. It's not always the case. He wouldn't have played much with Drake London. It's going to take a bit of time to get used to. Drake London hasn't had a huge amount. He hasn't had huge games. We know the talent is there. I would be inclined to have Lazard over London. I don't think you're missing out on having Drake London on your roster. I don't think he's someone who's going to put up a 30-point week.
See, for Drake London had 12 targets this week and still was only last week was still only wide receiver 20.
Yeah, and that's my point.
You give 12.
We lost you there, but yeah, 12 targets, wide receiver 20.
They'll beat wide receiver 20 on the week.
That's what I mean. He's a floor play at best, and that's his best outcome is wide receiver 20. I think Lazard has got that higher finish in him, but again, we're looking at a roster here where he's got Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's got Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's got DJ Chark.
Who, Lazard?
And then Lazard, DPJ, and London. So London is it would be his fourth wide receiver. Would you have London or would you have Lazard? Because we both agree you'd keep DPJ, especially in the form he's in. I would have DPJ. But I think it's my fourth. I think because of the ceiling play, he's talking about a waiver claim here. I would have Lazard over London just for that ceiling.
Lazard's also got nicer matchups. Rams this week. Minnesota championship week. I don't like Miami in the middle, but
they're going to be chasing the game. So I look at the game script in those games. They're going to be chasing. Here's Aaron Rodgers' longest serving target, and I think there's a value in that. Listen, he could lay an egg. I don't feel comfortable starting him, but if I'm looking at my roster and thinking of a waiver, who would I rather have on my roster if I had to push come to shove start? I would start Lazard shooting for the moon, especially as a team that's 9-5, trying to win the league. Then playing Drake London, thinking, "Oh well, I just played Drake London, and he's got me a wide receiver 24 finish."
Drake London had 12 targets, wide receiver 20, right? Drake London had 12 targets twice this season. He's only got double figures in 3 games on the year. Lazard's never had 12 targets this season, put up 8 double-digit figure points.
Yeah,
shows the efficiency. There's only more points per target, and he'll get less, but the conversion's there for him.
Yeah, I would have Lazard. I think I'd sleep easy with that on my roster as your fourth wide receiver. Like, you're not in the position where you're probably going to start him. You've got other spots where you'll play players, but yeah, I think as someone who you might need, I'd have Lazard over Drake London. I feel comfortable dropping Drake London. I had him in a couple of leagues and I dropped him. So. Is there anything else? You had a big win yesterday. Well, not. I mean, on the Nat Coombs show, DraftKings tournament. Tell us about the build. Tell us how you constructed another fine win this year.
I went probably quite high end. Minnesota Detroit game. Expected to be high points. I went with Goff and St. Brown.
I've lost you again. You're in there as
and take up Hawkinson as well in the hope that I could get a touchdown from him. Can you hear me?
Yeah, got you.
Cool. So I just targeted. I said before on the show how I've targeted higher games, higher points expectancy games, and then I'm gonna say normally the unfavored team or the least favorite. Actually, the Lions were the favorite in the game, which still seemed a little alien to me, but I actually thought they would have been behind. So I went with Goff, cheaper, St. Brown on the Lions, and then I added Jefferson and Hawkinson on the comeback Expecting them to be heavy. Running backs, I put in Elliott. I expected Dallas to, well, I think everybody expected Dallas to run over Houston quite comfortably and get a lot of leg work. And I thought he'll share the workload, but there should still be more than an ample to go around. It was only helped by his late touchdown. Cheap budgets for me and low 2% was Leonard Fournette, PPR scoring. Tampa are going to be behind. He is a target. So even though Rashad White's picking up more of the carries, Leonard Fournette's got a steady floor there at that sort of price point. Evan Ingram was my wild card pick. Cheap, you start scrolling and find a cheap tight end that you fancy. And it was a matchup I liked, a setup I liked. Evan Ingram went in there. George Pickens, again, was a wide receiver. I thought was quite like the matchup in Baltimore. Second wide receiver behind Deontay Johnson. And I went with the Panthers D. There wasn't a lot of cheap Ds that were really favourable. But they can perform on the day. They can cause turnovers. Geno hasn't mistaken him. So I round it out with that. So I went with two tight end build, which is unusual for me. Very unusual for me.
Wow. Yeah.
It played off.
I love
Jefferson,
it.
obviously, if he'd have had his touchdown that was a touchdown that never counted, would have been even more points for him.
It would have been even more gravy.
I mean, he secretly put up a 200-yard game, right? No one's talking about it. And he had what? I don't know what it was, 47 or something on that one as well.
It's just a normal Jefferson day now.
Yeah. But what did he have? Was it 47 or 49 on that touchdown that wasn't given as well?
40. Yeah, it was mid-40s. Yeah, mid-40s touchdown that was struck off.
It was at 223. He'd have been touching 300 yards and 2 scores.
I know.
It's crazy. But yeah, that was all. No. I didn't play that lineup in enough places in that format. I made slight tweaks to it in different places, but hey, a win's a win. We'll take it.
That's it. And, everybody now, we've got one more game to go, and then it's the fantasy playoffs. 3 weeks or maybe 4 weeks if you're playing a weird Week 18 league, and we'll be here for that. I don't think I've got any weird Week 18 leagues, but we've got a lot of playoffs.
Week 18 could be anybody.
Oh, right. I tell you what, it used to be my least favorite column of the year. Like literally spin a wheel. But yeah, it's gonna be a wild playoff season. Good luck to all of you. Good luck to those of you in the Scott Fish Bowl playoffs. If you're still alive, good luck if you're in large tournament formats and if you're doing well in those.
There's a fair few Britons still carrying the flag for us over here.
Yeah, there are.
I reckon we're probably still at about 10 UK entrants going strong. And one of them, 5 yards, Hannah, is top 15 this week as well.
That's amazing.
Which is incredible. And we had her on here at the start of the year, didn't we? Talking about how she was pretty new and how she picked it up and learned in one of your beginner leagues last year, Murf. And here she is top 15 in Scott Fish Bowl in the year 2.
I know it's wild, and she's done so well, and she's grasped concepts and pushed the envelope, and it just shows if you do the work and it pays off for you, you can have really, really good seasons. And she's one of the most engaging people I know, and it's good to see her succeeding. And I hope someone brings that home, and I hope it's her, and I hope one of the UK folks brings home the Scott Fish Bowl. But if not, it's a good showing. I think this is the level. I think I made like the last 600 or 300 once, and I got knocked out by a Darius Slayton Monday night curse that knocked me out, which is horrible. But I think, it's great to see people still in it and fighting hard. I'm trying to take down the Raz Bowl as it stands, so I should go back to number 1 tonight. Nice. I'm 3 points behind second, but I have D-Hop. Should get me that in a little bit of a buffer. I didn't have a tight end this week, so it's a weird format, the Raz Bowl. So it's mostly analysts, some fans, and before the playoffs, it's a complete best ball. So the first 10, 11 weeks is best ball, and then you goes to set lineups, but there's no waivers. So you have 1 point of the season where you can add waivers. So I'm down to one tight end, which is Cole Kmet, and he had a bye last week, so I had to play last week with no tight end. But it doesn't seem to have hurt me too much. But I think we're down to the last 24 in that format. And King's Classic, where I got burned last year, got the Stocks and I got the number 1 seed in the snake, and we've snuck in the auction. So we'll have 2
nice.
runners in that to try and bring a belt back to the UK and beat the boys from Brazil and Canada and Australia and the US and a few other analysts that are part of that. So it'd be good to beat those guys and set them straight. So, and also I'm in a weird league, so it's like an analyst league, and the 6th spot goes to points 4, and so I've got a team that's going to sneak into the playoffs at 6 and 8.
Nice.
But I'm second in scoring in that league. I'm second in scoring, touching first. I'm like a few points behind first, and I'm 6 and 8. It's actually ridiculous. I might just get screwed every week.
I'll bet.
And you've got quite a few playoffs to set.
Yeah, I've got Craig in a couple of weeks, hopefully, in the Bucks UK League. So now you've told him how to beat me. That'll be fun. I'll be out of that one. The EFFC, I'm still in. I look like progressing. Second top scorer already this week with the hop to go. So should move on quite comfortably in that one. I'll stick to my DFS week by week and get some money. Other than that, it's I'm going to miss the playoffs. That hurts always. A couple of 5-yard leagues, guillotine leagues that we run are getting down to the wire now. I'm out of those, but I'm in the Fantasy Cares Eliminator with Casey Kasem. We spoke about it earlier. I almost feel embarrassed to win it because it's stupid scoring by John Bosch that sets up, and I took, I can't remember off the top of my head, I think it was 6 defenses and 7 kickers and Justin Herbert and Tyler Boyd. What it was worth.
And 1 running back.
No, it was
I've lost you again.
the Patriots as an auto pick. That was one.
Oh, I've totally lost you. Your screen is frozen. I'm gonna actually screenshot.
Kevin Harris of the Patriots was an auto pick. My only running back.
Okay. Yeah.
What's that?
Great. I said you're like you'd frozen mid movement, so it looked like you'd been you were blurred.
Sorry.
It was like you were in a massive rave. Just all by yourself. It was great. I enjoyed it. I tried to screenshot it, but it just moved in time.
No, but yeah, no, it's almost embarrassing to win that. But I'm down to the final 4 or 5, I think, and I've got a 20-point a week average higher than anybody else. So hopefully, I'll see it through.
Bring it home, man. And yeah, let us hear. Get in touch on Twitter. Get in touch with your stories of where you are in your league. Send some pictures in. Let us know how you're getting on in your leagues. And see how you're getting on. I actually have a question for Dan before we sign off. And I was keen to get your thoughts on this because I'm genuinely stumped. Right, I'm in a league where I currently hold on to the last playoff spot. Right, so I currently hold on to the last playoff spot, and it's not done on points 4. It's done on head-to-head scoring,
Record.
So it shouldn't change by winning. I should remain in spot, and I should be okay. I'm currently winning my matchup by 0.88 points.
Yeah,
he is done. He has no more players.
You've probably got there you go tonight.
Correct. Do I bench the Patriots DST and pray for no stat correction? Any other position? So wide receiver. And it's a standard league. So wide receiver or running back, I'd feel all right. I'd put them out there. Yeah. Very rare they're going to get negative. But we're talking DST and we're talking about Arizona, which isn't the best offense in the world, but a -1 is possible.
And you want to know what you should do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, big leagues, money leagues should have written rules, written formats against this kind of thing. In which case you abide by them. If it's a
home league.
Integrity. Said if it was any other position, you wouldn't have a problem. Then I say you play it and you take your chits.
Yeah, I'm thinking I just might let it ride. It's a home league.
I'd play with integrity. I'd say if it was a cash league, there was money running on it, and there wasn't in the rules, and they hadn't put bylaws in place to allow this kind of thing, or then no. for me, how would you feel if someone done it to you? I'd feel aggrieved that you play your best lineup and you take.
I mean, I'd feel less aggrieved
I
only on the.
think every league, you should have a starter at every position.
Yeah, I mean, I'd feel less aggrieved only because it's strategy, right? And I think it's a game, and I'm all right with it if you play. But yeah, I think I'm just going to let it ride.
For me, it's against the spirit of it.
Yeah, I'm going to play it anyway, but I just was curious to see where you sat on it. I think if it was like, I'd feel a lot better if it was like 2 or 3 points, but yeah, it's fine either way. I'll let it ride. We'll see what happens tomorrow. If I miss the playoffs, because if I miss the playoffs by it, I'm going to go mental.
I get that. And as I say, if there was something at stake and they hadn't covered it in the laws, I'd be all for doing it. And it's a home league, as you say. It's done for fun.
Yeah.
I'll
let it ride. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Okay. And also just be funny to kick out and rank out the playoffs as a result of that.
Sure would. Yeah, I understand that now.
All right, I'll let it ride. But yeah, I think that's it. I think we've given people a lot of food for thought here. I suggest a notepad. I suggest you probably have to listen to this 2 or 3 times. I'm just checking if there's any more questions. I don't think there is. So yeah, I think unless there's anything else you want to shout out, UK FFC tickets or anything else.
Yeah, UK FFC tickets are about July something or other now. I can't remember because we're kind of taking the back seat. It's so far away, but the planning is all kind of in place and the ideas and all that lot. So in the new year, that will ramp its way up. There's lots of big things coming. Anybody that thought about going and saw what we had, it is going to be bigger. It is going to be better. There's a lot more going on than last year. Last year was 3 panels. We've got more panels. We've got different corners. We've got live drafts. We've got stuff for beginners, whether that be a beginner to fantasy, whether that be a beginner to content creation, whether you want to write, whether you want to pod, whether you want to record, stat build. We're looking at all of these things, and all of these things are going to be covered, and they're all going to be covered by some very, very good minds within the fantasy industry. We've got 1 or 2 surprise people coming along as well to do some Q&As as well, hopefully. Some really good minds in the industry, in both the NFL industry and the fantasy industry. We've got people already coming in from Germany. There's a couple from America, from South Africa, all flying in for this event, which is incredibly humbling and bizarre at the same time, that people are spending what is a large sum of money to come and spend the day with us and talk fantasy. So there's going to be lots to come and follow. If you don't follow it, @_UKFFC, and I'm sure in the new year we'll start really ramping and building that up.
Yeah, it sounds good. I'm looking forward to my panel talk. I hope people find it useful. And if not, then whatever, throw stuff at me. I don't mind. I'll just duck and miss, and then the person sitting behind me is going to get hit.
Permission granted there. Had it recorded.
There you go. But no, it'd be lots of fun. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing some good friends there as well. And do get your tickets. Go on the website and go find that and follow the guys and everything else. But I'll do it. That'll do it for another week. Next time we speak, we will have teams eliminated from the playoffs. We will have teams that are advancing, and we'll be dreaming about bringing ships to the yard. So I'm looking forward to us building a bigger harbour, Dan, and landing some ships in the dock. And hopefully some nice hardware coming our way this year. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in and for watching. And don't forget, as always, keep rushing.
Go Pats D.